Latency.
The goal of latency control in game servers is to deploy game servers to locations with the lowest latency for the majority of players. For some games, such as turn-based games, latency isn't a major consideration. For faster-paced real-time games, latency can be critical to gameplay. Your game server software has to deliver fair gameplay and is the ultimate arbitrator of time-sensitive interactions between players. The speed of light causes a hard limit on latency, making the geographical location of your game server relative to players critical for some games.
Where are your players currently located? Where are they going to be located? Have you planned for geographical expansion in your game? Are the players being placed into matches near enough to each other? If they're far apart, some of them will have more latency. In every case, latency is a function of the distance between the game server and the player. Although milliseconds don't exactly match up with miles or kilometers, there is a correlation between network hops and the delays that occur. When you host a game in your own on-premises data center, there are several considerations. Because they're costly, you can only open a limited number of data centers in different locations. This means that you're limited to the degree that data centers are in proximity to players. Each data center will have a finite capacity. After a data center is established, the capacity can't be moved to another location. Players around the world play at different times of day. This means it's advantageous to be able to move the capacity where it's needed. You might want to start with an on-premises data center, but mix other strategies for game server hosting as the market for your game expands with an overflow solution. Co-location providers offer you more flexibility of location for game servers. There are still upfront capital cost and startup cost. Co-location providers involve negotiating long-term contracts. Because of the contracts, if your demand moves, the game servers can't. Similar to on-premises game server hosting, if demand exceeds capacity, it's expensive with long lead times to increase capacity. If capacity exceeds demand, the cost of the capacity is wasted. Capacity planning for co-location providers still requires you to buy capacity for peak demand. Using co-location providers doesn't allow adjusting capacity to meet daily playing habits, which affects latency for players. AWS offers numerous regions. However, there is no upfront capital cost and no contracts that lock you into a region. If your demand moves, you can reduce capacity in one region and ramp up capacity in another with no penalty. This addresses the issue of changes of daily playing habits. If demand exceeds capacity, you can increase capacity without delay. There's no lead time. If capacity exceeds demand, you can take immediate action to reduce costs so capacity isn't wasted. Because you can scale game server hosting to meet demand, you don't have to buy capacity in advance for peak demand. Here's an example. One company incubates its games and initially hosts them on premises in its own data center. As the popularity of its game grows, the company first overflows capacity to a nearby AWS region. As part of the expansion strategy, the company opens new markets in different geographic locations by hosting the game in more AWS regions. Also, they might use adjacent regions for overflow capacity or for backup, allowing higher latency games rather than turning away players. Finally, there are some locations where the networking infrastructure does not support a good gameplay experience to the closest AWS region. In these cases, the game is hosted in co-location providers to get the game servers nearer to the players. In any case, latency is likely to be a business and technical requirement that will influence your choice of game server hosting solution.